With Mad Max Fury Road, George Miller created what has been hailed as one of the greatest action films of all time. So to say Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, had to meet high expectations is an understatement. How do you build action sequences that compete with the best action sequences ever?
The question is, do you have it in you to make it epic?
This is how they shot it, Furiosa. Before we witness Miller's universe in action,
Witness me!
take a moment to subscribe to StudioBinder and click the bell for notifications. We'll be using StudioBinder's shot list to look at some of the technical choices the filmmakers made from shot to shot. Warning, there will be mild spoilers for Furiosa. Ready? Rev your engines.
What was that?
That is the darkest of angels. The fifth rider of the apocalypse.
George Miller conceived the Furiosa story while he was writing Fury Road. Initially, he had planned to make Furiosa as an anime, but the idea was scrapped when Fury Road got the green light. With the success of Fury Road, Miller and his team were able to finally make the dream Furiosa a reality, with a $168 million budget and over 240 days of production. For Miller, the visuals of Furiosa needed to be informed by the story.
Story always has primacy. Story is all. Everything is driven by story. But then to play with the technology and kind of do things that you couldn't imagine doing before is very exciting.
The story of Furiosa required visuals that were even more expansive and filled with spectacle than Fury Road. To pull this off, Miller brought in cinematographer Simon Duggan to replace John Seal, the cinematographer for Fury Road, who has since retired. Duggan describes his goal as to keep the visual line from Fury Road while offering something broader, whether in terms of setting, characters, and above all, the long timescale of the narrative. This approach of borrowing techniques from Fury Road, while also elevating them, is most evident in the film's action sequences. Let's look at how they were accomplished, beginning with prep. One of the main differences between Furiosa and its predecessor lies in the planning process. Miller discussed how he and his team worked on Fury Road.
On Fury Road, storyboards became the way which we worked. We did do some previs, but we had a thing where every day in the middle of the Namibian desert, Guy had scale models of each of the vehicles. And we'd have these meetings, which were very safety driven, and we'd drill that with the toys.
For Furiosa, Miller and stunt coordinator Guy Norris devised a new technique, intricately designing the action entirely with previs. Norris explains.
Harrison, my son, who's my partner, developed a kind of a digital version of toys. So we designed the action inside the Unreal Engine like a stage play or a football play.
This not only allowed the team to get a better idea of how the stunts would work, but also enabled Miller to decide how to cover it far ahead of time. Duggan explains he was able to quickly plot movements for camera tracking vehicles, drones, and also Steadicam shots, especially the oneers, where it was to be a single shot sequence. It was from this process that George realized how much more dynamic it was to be continuously part of the action with the cameras. The Unreal Engine allowed for even more detailed planning beyond camera movement. Miller and Duggan were able to input data like lens and sun angles, vehicle speeds, and more in order to get the most accurate plan for the shot possible. Of course, once the ambitious plans were made in Unreal Engine, they would need to be executed in real life. This required an innovative and varied use of equipment. Furiosa utilized an expansive array of equipment to capture its jaw-dropping action. Over 30 cameras were used on set, each fitting a unique need presented by Miller's vision. The primary camera was the Alexa 65, chosen for its large format, which Duggan notes captures beautiful-looking faces and the desert vistas attain an almost 3D feel. Duggan and his team also used smaller red Komodos and red V Raptors, which could more easily be attached to vehicles or used for Steadicam work. For the Alexa 65, Duggan mainly used ARRI DNA prime lenses. According to Duggan, the DNAs were ideal for capturing both intimate moments and action. He explains, when shooting wide open, they had a creamier quality with a nice fall-off to the edges. We tested a few detuned DNA lenses, but decided with the amount of action involved that we wanted to maintain focus across the screen. For the other cameras, Duggan and his team used an array of lenses, including Ingenue, Fujinon premister zooms, and Canon and Zeiss CP primes. To capture the full scale of the action, sequences required massive feats of rigging. The goal was to have almost all of the coverage moving with the vehicles. This meant that elements like an edge arm remote crane needed to be mounted onto cars, which could drive alongside the action, or even be attached to a picture vehicle. The team also utilized drones to get aerial shots, while camera buggies captured the action on the ground. To make things even more complicated, these action sequences were often captured by the second unit, who sometimes were shooting hundreds of miles away from Miller and the rest of the team. This required a satellite link to be set up so that Miller could watch what was being captured in real time and give notes from afar. This plethora of camera and rigs being used at any given time meant that many of them would get in the shot. As such, the final step for pulling off the action was VFX. In general, George Miller and his Mad Max team prioritized practical effects.
You try to get as many practical effects. Main reason being that these films do not defy the laws of physics. There's no flying people or vehicles, and I think we perceive that as audiences.
Most of the VFX used in Furiosa were in service of practical effects that were captured in production. In other words, they heightened the realism of the stunts.
Trivial things like, normally if you watched a movie, you could see the number of skin marks on the road, told you how many takes. If you watch the classic car chase movies. Nowadays you could do that. You could keep the skies consistent. You can make every stuntman and actor absolutely safe with cables and so on.
But these details still created challenges for the VFX team, especially since there is so much movement in the set pieces. Duggan explains, the camera was always moving and sometimes in 360-degree moves, so there was seldom the opportunity to use key screens. Most of the foreground action was rotoscoped when background extensions were needed. To make the VFX even more seamless, Duggan worked with colorist Eric Whipp to color scenes before they were sent to the effects department, giving the artists a better sense of how their effects would play in the larger visual palette. The blend of practical effects and VFX results in undeniably breathtaking action sequences. While Furiosa is more character-driven than its predecessor, Miller and his team didn't skimp on the set pieces, utilizing new technology and approaches to expand upon the visual language established in Fury Road. Ready to start planning your action epic? Use StudioBinder's storyboard and shot listing software to get started. That's all for now. Time to embark on your road to glory.
Am I in Valhalla?
What's Valhalla? Valhalla's the Hall of the Slain, a paradise for dead heroes.
Good for you. We're looking for a place of abundance. What's abundance?
Plentifulness.